Are you ready to rewind? Take a nostalgia-filled ride back to a simpler time. It's Acid Wash Memories, a retro pop culture celebration. And now your hosts, Joe Murata and Michael Quinn.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 105 of Acid Wash Memories, a retro pop culture celebration. Today, we're giving you a little history on the movie theater. My name is Joe Murata.
Movies.
Yes, and Mr. Ebert over here is Michael Quinn. How you doing, Michael?
Hi, 2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up. Folks, thanks so much for being with us here on Acid Wash Memories, a retro pop culture celebration. If this happens to be your first time, what we do is each and every week is a slice, if you will, of retro pop culture. Right, a slice, Quinn.
Yes, slice.
We slice it up.
A slice of crappy movie theater pizza.
Absolutely, exactly, with a little popcorn and butter there.
Yeah.
So that's what we do here. It's usually every week, but it's not always every week here on Acid Wash Memories.
Whenever it happens.
Whenever time permits.
Yeah.
Here's the key to knowing. If you see an episode that's new, that means we did one that week.
If you see an episode that says Vault, it's not new.
Yeah, that's a not new one. If it says like last episode was 14 days ago, it means we haven't done one in 14 days.
Just look at the time thing.
You just look at the thing on your thing that you watch. Your podcast.com app. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for being with us here on podcast.com. We really do appreciate you. And you can follow us if you still have the X Twitter thing at AWM Podcast, and also join our Facebook group if you still have that at Acid Wash Memories on Facebook. Okay?
Yeah.
That's all. Facebook.
Yeah.
So this is going to be, Mr. Quinn, a casual light history mixed with our reminiscences of movie theaters. Because,
yes.
First, Quinn, have you ever been to a movie theater?
Yeah, plenty.
Okay,
plenty times. All the kinds of theaters. There
Perfect.
Exists. Like, I've been to them.
So it's a good thing you're here this week to co-host with me.
Yes, expert of movie theaters.
Folks, if you're an expert, we want to hear all of your memories, by the way, your acid-washed memories, if you will. We're going to give you some basic history of how we got to what we have now as the movie theater. But I'm sure everyone listening, whether you're in the United States or on the other side of the pond or anywhere else, that you've been to one. Maybe they call it a cinema where you're from, or a theater. That might be fancy, you know?
Is there a French name for this? There has to.
It's probably hard to pronounce, I'll tell you that much.
Cinémique.
Cinémique.
Or some shit like that. Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, so we're going to talk about them because, I've been in the movies before.
Yes.
And I've been,
oh, have you?
I really have. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And I've been to various theaters, and I've been to good ones. I've been to not so good ones.
Same.
Yeah. And we want to hear those stories from you guys as well. But let's get into it here. The concept of a theater, a theater, has been around forever, since ancient Greece, right?
Right.
They were doing their stuff.
But we're not talking about those kind of theaters.
No. As far as the motion picture kind, the movie.
The movie ones.
This dates back to the 1800s. There used to be this thing called stroboscopic animation, kind of like a primitive version of a movie with different frames, and you would run it through a thing, and then you could see stuff.
Almost like a flip book.
Kind of like a flip book on a screen.
Yeah.
Right. And that was actually being done in Vienna, in Austria, of course. Vienna, known for its fingers and its sausages, right?
And now the Cinebook, or whatever this was.
Yeah, the Cinebook. This is actually a magician named Ludwig Dobler.
Whoa.
1847, if you're
Wow, that's really early, actually. I would not expect that.
But as far as actual film, what we would think of as a movie, you ever hear of vaudeville? We've mentioned it here on
vaudeville.
the show before.
They tend to come up, vaudeville over there, right?
Vaudeville played a surprisingly large part in the development of a lot of the things that we take for granted to this day.
General entertainment. And it leaked into the mid 20th century, to the point that there was vaudevillian people hosting television shows and shit,
in movies,
because they were still around. You know what I mean?
Were, though.
Yeah.
They were. There were vaudeville theaters, of course, because it was a very popular form of entertainment for a while. And they simply took these vaudeville theaters and screened these, at the time, very short animated films. This was done as early as 1892 in Paris, speaking of which, Paris, right? By a fella named Émile Reynaud, okay? Now, over here in the United States, right, us uncultured swine.
I love feeling dirty. I love feeling cheap.
You ever hear of Thomas Edison?
Yeah, him.
He lived in Edison.
Well,
it's a big
Menlo Park,
coincidence.
but they changed the town name to Edison.
No, I thought he was just born there.
It's right over there. We live right next to it.
We do. Don't go there.
Yeah.
He was A big doubter in using a theater for movies, of course.
He was always.
He was
if you
wrong
look
a lot.
into him, like, yeah, it's always like, no, we do it my way.
Right.
Also, I steal all your shit and put my name on
This
it.
is all true. Remember the AC/DC debate? I don't mean the band. I don't mean Highway to Hell.
Actual electricity.
Yeah, like that was that whole thing with AC versus DC. But anywho, he was like, no, we don't need to use theaters to watch these animated motion pictures. I'm going to back, I should say, the kinetoscope, which was basically a one-person viewer. You look into this device, kind of like a peep show without the raunchy connotation.
I've always hated the concept of this.
Why is that?
Because it's like they already had the technology to project it onto a screen, right? Like
yes, they did.
knew if you put a light through a lens and yada, 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 and pops out, right?
They knew about that.
But this dude is like, no, everyone's going to have their own personal movie. And it's like, are you stupid? Like what? Like this is just dumb.
A collection of short features meant to be shown one at a time on a coin-operated peephole viewing cabinet called a kinetoscope.
In a way, though, would you say that Mr. Edison was ahead of his time? Because nowadays, Quinn, we all have our own personal movie theater
I get it,
on
but
our phone.
you know what the real avenue was is that you had to put a nickel in it.
A nickel?
Hence Nickelodeon,
That's
right? Like it was just
correct.
like a money collecting scheme.
It really was. It was a racket.
It's essentially just like a vending machine that shows you a movie.
That's an interesting point.
You know what I mean?
It's basically a vending machine for a short film too.
Right,
It's not
yeah.
like we're not talking like Gone with the Wind.
Right.
It wasn't out yet.
Because I bet you what was important to him about this was that he could have a patent on the machine that showed the thing so that when they sold it, he would get a cut of it, plus there was probably royalties to the Nickelodeon. It was probably a whole fucking thing.
He
right?
was very big on patents.
Right, he was very big on like business and shit.
Yeah.
That's like why most of his stuff got remembered because at the end of the day, he capitalismed it up and like, like all his shit got pushed through, right?
Capitalism is now a verb here on this show. In 1895, a guy named Eugene Laust unveiled something known as the idoloscope, which was basically a film strip projector that held two loops of film, and it went through the projector really fast, right? And there was also something known as the bioscope, which sounds very scientific, in Germany. But as far as a dedicated movie theater, not an existing vaudeville theater or not like your own peep show, your own Nickelodeon.
Like a traditional, it has seats in it for multiple people that can watch one film, right?
Yes, exactly. The first one of those to be built expressly with the purpose for showing motion pictures was in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, there you go.
Part of an exhibition, a fair, if you will. They're like, look at our new thing. It's a movie theater.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
It's funny that all these weird no, it's this, no, it's that, and then it's just the most simple fucking thing. It's just we pulled down a vinyl screen or something, and then just projected from a big projector, just the thing, and that's it.
Here's Fatty Arbuckle or whatever it was. You know what I mean?
I always like these quaint stories about the early movie theaters where there was a famous movie of a train coming towards the camera.
Great train robbery.
And people didn't know. It was such a new concept to see a motion picture that people thought a fucking train was literally coming at them. There was people who ran out of the fucking theater as it got closer.
It is interesting to put this in context. Quinn is talking about here is a totally real thing. Audio entertainment was barely a thing at this point, at the turn of the 20th century, right? We
didn't even touch on the fact that this didn't even have sound.
And this didn't even have sound, right? Yeah. So, radio was very popular, as you guys know, for the first half of the 20th century.
Right.
And TV would take over for the second half. But in terms of film, they didn't have sound, but the concept of this entertainment that wasn't live in front of your face was very, very new.
Yes.
Very novel at the time, right?
Yes. And honestly, I can see as a person, right, living back then, right, never seeing one of these things before. I think it would take a little bit to wrap your mind around what the hell you're even seeing, right? Yeah.
The closest analog I can think of now, and it's not quite the same thing, but just to try to give an idea, is the virtual reality things.
Yeah, where you put a headset on and you're completely immersed, right?
But then you see these videos of somebody else, filming someone with their phone
and
that's
they look
doing
like
it.
a doofus.
And they're grabbing at
and
stuff.
they're confused, yeah.
Yes.
The one good example, too, is think of the one that I've seen these at places. These were very early VR experiments where, they were bringing them to the public is they'd have a plank and you'd stand on the plank, and the VR was that you were on top of a skyscraper,
Right.
and that you would like fall, and people were like freaking out, right?
Right.
Because it's just so immersive. But imagine this. Now go back like 100
years.
plus years. You've never even seen a motion picture. You've never even seen moving pictures ever.
This picture certainly seems to move, but by stopping and starting the action, we see that it is really the result of a series of slightly different pictures passing quickly before the eye.
Pictures weren't popular. Like not everyone
Photographs, you
had
mean.
photographs
Right.
either.
You had to have money generally.
Right. And so, I mean, photographs they had exploded enough.
They crept in.
They were known. But again, not everyone had this. The point is
You got
that
like one a year.
the
maybe.
point is that you're in a group, you're in a theater with a group of people where you were used to an environment where there was real people up there performing, and suddenly now you're seeing even more fantastical shit because they can do that, right? And bring it to you, and it's a motion picture, and they can do goofy stuff with the camera too, like the train coming at the camera,
Yep,
right?
or the guy shooting at the screen. Is one
Right.
of the other famous things,
Right, because then you probably literally have people in the theater that, again, this is so new. They're probably trying to dodge the bullet,
Yeah.
right?
And even if they know, right, that it's not real, it's the same thing with VR. It still plays tricks on your senses because you're not used
if you
to
have
it.
if you have no context, right?
Exactly.
And so it is fascinating. The other fascinating thing about this stuff is that some of these movies were preserved.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
And honestly, one of the coolest like YouTube things I always like to look up, just if we're talking about movies in general and early movie theaters, it's these movies that were almost experimental from like the 1870s and the 1880s, and they
Yeah.
had people in them, and you're like, this is weird.
Yeah,
like
and-
this is weird seeing like their clothes and the where they live and like what they're doing, right?
Yeah, the ones taken in like Paris or like New York or like
Yeah.
actual cities that still exist today.
Yes, and it's just bizarre.
It is.
Like
It's really cool.
because it really does. It's literally capturing. It's like a time capsule of a time that predates even movies because
Yes.
these are the first ones.
These
right?
are experimental, like you said. So we talked about how there was an unveiling of the first ever movie theater in Atlanta. That was a temporary setup for this exhibition. The first permanent movie theater is likely and agreed upon by most people to be the Eden Theater in France.
Okay.
Now, as the popularities of movies themselves grew in the 20th century, obviously there was a silent era with all the silent comedians and drama as well, but then especially with talkies, right, in the 20s and the 30s. As the popularity grew, so did the need for more and more dedicated theaters, because now we've got a bona fide business, Quinn.
So, I mean, even in the silent film era, you had the big theaters, especially already cropping up in Hollywood, right? I mean,
Absolutely, and New York.
yeah, and now they were starting to get elaborate. This, to me, was a concept that I find interesting about early movie theaters. A lot of them were trying to mirror what an opera theater would look like or something like that. It's like, okay, so like this is going to be the new form, right? And like people just they were like, okay, well, let's decorate it like it's like a true theater, right?
Yes, this was high class still. This was viewed as, a night out, an evening out to go to the movies. You dress up.
Right.
You're going to a classy establishment.
Yeah, once it wasn't out, it was out of the, like, this new shit, and it's just all this junky, these tiny places.
It's kind of like, how when air travel first came about, it was very classy, right? And luxurious.
It wasn't even classy as much as, like, it was like it was, but I guess people were like, this is an experience. You want to wear your Sunday best.
Yes.
You don't want to be disrespectful, right? It was like that.
It was like that,
It was like
exactly.
there were like people were like, no, this is like a serious thing. I'm gonna be sure to look respectful. Right?
Absolutely.
You'll find our snack bar chock full of good things to eat and drink. Tasty, tempting hot dogs, thirst-quenching soft drinks, fresh, crunchy popcorn, a complete assortment of delicious candy, and a full line of cigarettes.
Now, we've talked before about the studio system and the big companies like RKO and MGM and all that. We don't need to get into all of them, but we have to just bear in mind here, starting with the 30s, this is still before the age of television, right? I know it was invented in the late 30s, but in terms of like the golden age of movies, this started in the 30s. The idea of going somewhere and seeing this, wondrous, majestic, captivating experience.
Right. And by the time we get to the 30s even, the filmmakers start getting quantum leaps better as far as effects and, the stories they're telling and like length of movies. Like starting to have sound now, and starting to translate famous novels to movies.
Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, like it's now becoming like the main form. Like I would say, like by the 30s, movies is like the number one, right?
Yeah, it's huge by the 30s.
Yeah.
I mean, this is 30s, 40s, 50s is pretty much the golden age of Hollywood, right? That's generally what they call it.
It's the main mode of entertainment, right?
Because
you go to the movies,
right? As we've mentioned, I'll just say one more time: TV was not a thing yet.
Yeah.
Right until the 50s, really.
If you want to watch a thing on a screen, you go to the movies.
Unless you had like a reel-to-reel projector and you lived in Connecticut because you're rich, right? As we always say, and then you could watch it.
Or you lived in Hollywood. A lot of those guys had their own projectors.
They would get their own reels, their own projectors. Beyond those elite people in Connecticut and in Hollywood, you went to a theater, and they were all over the place. But primarily, and here's one of the key differences from later. In urban downtown areas, big centers of population, because that's where most people lived up until the 50s, right? When we know about this.
I mean,
pre-war.
You still had your, there's also there's movies about how theaters were in the rural towns, though.
Yeah, they had them.
Like, usually, in the rest of the country, there was a town where all the farms were centered around, right?
Exactly.
And you went to the town, and the town had a movie theater, right?
Yeah, and they also had like a post office and like a store, right?
I think that's saying something.
Yes.
Is that the movie theater was a thing that went along with the post office.
Yeah.
It's that important.
And the general store, right?
It's like, no. The town needs a movie theater, right? It's like
you're correct, though.
So that everyone in the local area can come and watch a movie.
Yep.
Once again, the good citizens of Kingston upon Hull are able to go for an evening's entertainment to the Cecil Theatre. For this magnificent building has come to take the place of the old Cecil, which was destroyed by enemy action on that terrible night of May 1941.
Now, around this same time, especially starting in the 30s, more and more people also got these newer things known as cars. And then we got the advent of a new form of a movie theater known as the drive-in.
Good evening, folks, and a hearty welcome to our drive-in theater. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you, one that will provide several hours of pleasurable relaxation and diversion for you and your family.
This feels like a very West Coast thing inherently, right? Because, in California, the weather's good enough to do this all year round.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, the East Coast, this is like they had them, but they were really like a summer kind of thing, right?
Because it wants to go in February and
screw that,
turn your
right?
heat on and
maybe in the South where it's a little warmer.
Well, Florida,
that's another good one. But I always felt like I associate when I see even in current, Back to the Future or something, right? It's like the drive-ins in California.
It's a California thing. I mean, I know it's not just a California thing,
right? But
you know what's interesting about it, though? They died off right around when we were coming of age. In fact, there was one in Jersey until right when we were born
I feel like they were doomed from the first place because of the weather.
It's a big part of it. And,
you know what I mean?
I mean, you guys know what we don't need to explain a drive-in. I mean, it's where the hanky and the panky take place too, right? I mean, if you're a teenager, I guess.
Yeah.
But you pull up and there's a screen.
I thought you weren't going to explain it. You chooch.
Either they would have speakers, depending on the theater.
Yeah.
Or you'd have this, you'd tune into a frequency on your car stereo and it would come through your car.
Yeah, they pipe it through the radio, yeah.
It is pretty novel, but to me it's just that. It's novel. You know what I'm saying? It's not...
To me, it represents more mid to late movies where it was the thing is about the 50s was when, TV was starting to pop up and they were like, oh, we have competition now, right? And the drive-in theater reeks of oh, we have to change it up, right?
That's exactly what it is.
You know what I mean? We have to change how it's delivered so that it's still novel.
I think that's exactly right, and I'm glad you brought that up because TV now presented, like you said, competition for people, and this is around the same time in the 50s and 60s where movies started to get, and this is not an exact science, but the gist of it is. You had a lot of musicals. You had a lot of things that were no, this is in color now.
You had experiments with 3D movies.
You had
because they were again, an attraction. We got to make it something.
First, the screen was silent.
Then it talked.
Then color.
Now the greatest advance of them all, the picture floats off the screen.
you started to really push the envelope of what you could do that. And these are things that TV could simply not compete with.
Right.
That's what happened around this time.
Higher budgets.
Higher budgets.
Because television shows did not have that.
Ensemble casts, elaborate sets, all these things that you could not find on TV.
Like Spartacus or Cleopatra or something like that.
Or just these really high budget screwball movies.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Where there's like
Some
a
Like It
million
Hot
stars in it, yeah.
Breakfast at Tiffany's, stuff like that. So by the 1960s, among many revolutions and changes in that decade, the studio system had died.
Right.
Good. So people...
I mean, if you don't know, it kind of kept stars, like certain actors, under one umbrella, and they couldn't jump, right? So it limited as far as like if somebody had a good idea for a movie, but they weren't with Paramount or whoever, they wouldn't be able to get those actors that maybe would fit that movie better.
The only way would be if the studio that had the contract agreed to loan them to the other studio.
It's like baseball; you had to like trade them and shit.
Seriously,
right?
It was very much the Ma Bell of the movies, right, Quinn?
Yeah.
The studio system.
But it did open the door for like a different era of filmmaking. Like
New Hollywood.
New Hollywood in the early 70s, and allowing smaller filmmakers to get reputable actors or sometimes new actors to show up in very well-made movies.
Absolutely. So, and the point in saying this is that movies were very, very, very popular with this new era starting in the late 60s.
Right.
You know, Stanley Kubrick and people like that. And a lot of things changed in the 60s. Another thing that changed is people started moving to the suburbs more and more and more and more. And suburbs, I mean, they started to become populated, whereas they were much more, even around here where I live. Until the 50s, 60s, it was a farm town. It was very spread out and rural. But during the baby boom and after is when all of those previously kind of rural-ish sparse
they got
towns
built up, and they would usually get a mall.
They'd usually get a mall,
and I think
a mini mall.
The mall, they would get two things as far as the movies was concerned. Because they had the land to sprawl, obviously they would build a mall.
Hey, that was almost like one of them haikus or something.
But there was the mall with the movie theater in it. There was also the other option of the megaplex, right? Where it was like, well, this area has tons of land. We can just build a gigantic movie theater, right? With like 20 theaters in it or something, right?
Yes, I want to talk about that actually.
Yeah.
So, as we had previously mentioned, when these were in the center of town or the center of population in downtown areas, these were usually single screen movie
Maybe
theaters,
one or two.
maybe a twin.
Yeah.
But that's usually it. Because like Quinn said, these were decadent. You know, these were elaborate. These were hearkening back to the turn of the century. This is the opera, but in movie form. By this point, by this 60s shift, right, we are just looking to herd people in and out as quickly as possible.
Many people into the movie theater as possible.
This ain't about looking good.
Right.
This ain't about operating well.
They fit like 100 people into one theater, and then the next room over, there's another 100 people.
Correct.
Right.
At the same time.
Right. Yeah. I'm probably exaggerating 100. It's probably 50 or 60.
Whatever the seating capacity is, right?
I think actually usually it was 80 because I would see it on the wall.
Yeah, because it's part of fire code. I think you have to post that, right?
It's probably like more than 80 maximum occupancy.
So these are known as multiplexes, having more than two theaters, right? And the first one ever was in Kansas City, Missouri, home of Harley Race.
That's interesting. So that was where the first, like, I guess, experiment, right? What if we did this? What if we put like multiple theaters?
And you know who opened it? AMC.
Right. And so I think we need to touch on this too.
Yep.
Here's another thing about the whole studio system and the theaters. A lot of people don't know this because it was like a million years ago, but part of the reason the studio system existed in the first place was the studios owned the theaters.
Yeah.
Like,
that's a good point to
That's
bring
the
up.
other thing we didn't bring up, right? Like,
Yeah, please bring that up.
If you went to see like an MGM picture, it was only at an MGM movie theater.
Yep.
Right?
That was frowned upon.
Right.
It was by people.
Or whoever the fuck they're like, you know, it might have not been MGM. They might have called the theater something else, but they carried MGM movies.
Correct.
Right?
And there'd be one that carried RKO Pictures and
Right.
Paramount and Columbia, whatever it might be.
This was another like aspect to it, right?
Yes, that's true. So when AMC, they started opening up more and more screens. A 4-screen Theater in 1966, the year of the last Beatles tour.
Again, by the time we get to AMC, now the movies, they just throw, they don't give a shit.
Yeah,
they don't
the studio
own
system's not a thing anymore.
Yeah, they don't own the theaters anymore.
Correct. And then the first 6-screen theater was opened up in 69.
Nice.
And these became the norm as less and less people were now interested in, well, this theater in the downtown area, 5 minutes from me, it only has one screen, but I can drive 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And now there's, 10 screens and I can choose a bigger selection.
The other thing this alleviated was, and this is, you and me will remember this, and probably a lot of our listeners. There was a time when you needed to call the movie theater to make sure they had enough seats.
Yeah.
The megaplex concept of multiple theaters, this kind of fixed that, right?
Yeah.
Because no matter what, even if they ran out of seats on the time you wanted to go, they were playing the same movie 15 minutes later in the adjacent room.
That was one of the things when during a premiere weeks, the first initial however long of a big movie, it would be playing multiple times in a staggered way at the same multiplex.
Because sometimes, also there was the aspect of trying to get there on time. So if you missed it, it wasn't a big deal because, I'll just wait in the lobby for 15, 20 minutes and it's at the one next door to it.
Play the old Mrs. Pac-Man game or whatever is in there.
Exactly.
Oh, hi. Because actually her name is Ms. Pac-Man, not Mrs. But because because we don't actually her marital status is unclear.
The first megaplex is generally agreed to be in Toronto in 1979 because it had 18 screens. That's what they're calling a megaplex.
Is that the number at which it's a megaplex? Because I feel like 10 by that point.
That's a multiplex.
Okay, that's a
Megaplex is 18 and up.
Really? They're actually classified?
Yeah, it's classified.
Huh.
There's twin screen and then multiplex and then megaplex. And that was 79. Now, things happened after that, and I want to make a delineation here. In case you're curious, if you're new, how old Quinn and I are, we're both about the same age, and we both vaguely remember the very beginning of the 1990s, the end of the 1980s, right?
Yes.
We're right on the threshold of remembering a little bit from those periods of time, right?
Right.
And during that period of time, Quinn, I remember having a huge listing of different movie theaters in our area to choose from.
And there was different ones with different sizes. And a lot of times they put the number at the end of the name of the movie theater to denote this is how many, theaters are in this one, right?
We used to have Cinema 5 in the mall.
Movie City 5.
And Movie City 5.
Right? And so those were next to each other.
And they sucked.
They sucked. Yeah, they were terrible.
We'll talk more about that soon.
But then you go down the highway a little bit.
Yep.
And at the end, where there was more open land, there was a movie megaplex, basically.
Lowe's. You're talking about the Lowe's?
The Lowe's opened up later.
91, I think.
It used to be like a flea market at the edge of a hill overlooking the river.
Ye Old Raritan River?
Yeah, and it was...
It's the bridge where
I used to go to
guy got thrown off in The Sopranos, didn't he?
Yeah, it was, actually.
Yeah.
But
you used to go to it when it was a flea market?
My family used to go to it as a flea market, and then suddenly they just tore it down, and it was a gigantic... It definitely is a megaplex, right? That
yes,
has more, that
has Lowe's is a megaplex.
So this was this blew everyone's mind when it came out because we had never seen anything like this in our area. We just had these tiny, only 5 theaters.
That was the most I had seen ever.
The floors were shitty and it was tiny.
If you could walk on them even.
And you had to, you really had to call ahead to even see anything.
Yes.
Because they were they had a lot of movie theaters, but sometimes the most they would play the same movie is 2 theaters at a time.
Yeah.
It was a legitimate problem in the area to see a movie.
So the reason I brought that up is because I don't know about your town where you're from, folks, but we didn't get our first local megaplex until I think that was 91 when that opened.
Right.
We both remember it, so I'm saying
I very distinctly remember seeing a movie for the first time there, and I don't remember what it was, but I remember distinctly it feeling very deluxe. It was way nicer than any movie theater I had ever been to in my life. That was the other characteristic of the megaplex, right? Was that it was so much nicer. Because there was just room to stretch out, I guess.
There was room to stretch out. It also felt like they were trying to provide it was almost like a hotel versus a motel.
Right.
With Cinema 5.
Yeah.
It was very motel.
Right. Yeah.
That was no, welcome to our hotel here.
Right. You walk in and there's carpeted floors and there's the thing that blew me away was the fact that when you walk in, you used to go to the movie theater, the Movie City 5 or the Cinema 5.
Cinema 5, yeah.
And you get the concessions, and it was kind of this like tiny little, there was like one person working there, and it's like, I want popcorn, and there's like a line, and it's like this.
It's all real.
This poor like one or two people are like trying to serve the entire fucking town popcorn, right? It was like insane, and it was tiny. You come to the Megaplex. You got a crew of 20 in this circular thing with multiple like distributions of like popcorn and snacks and soda and everything. And they had all this extra shit. Not to mention they had like arcade games in it and stuff so that if you had to wait, there was something to do. Like, it was awesome.
I got to say, that's one of the great things about, as much as I understand why people bemoan the loss of like the classic beautiful theater, because they are nice. And I've been to, like, there was the one down in Princeton. I went with my wife like 10 years ago.
Right.
We saw 42, the Jackie Robinson movie. Okay. Like a single screen, like a classy, elegant theater.
Old school theater, yeah.
But it was very quaint. It was very like self-aware that this is what they are.
They're trying to harken back to the past. But
yeah,
the thing is that I think that people tend to forget now that we're talking about it is it was the multiplex, the megaplex, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's fine.
It was solving a very real problem with the movies because a lot of people really do forget about like movie phone and like all this shit. You had to get there on time. Like, if you were late, like, screw you. Like, it was like they could not. They were trying to shove people in these places.
Absolutely.
Like, there was not enough movie theaters. Like in especially in suburban sprawls where there was like a lot of homes and people lived there and stuff.
And especially everyone thinks that the decade that they grew up in had the best movies, but especially when you really do think about the 80s
and 90s
blockbusters, that came out. People went there because to watch it on TV, you either had to wait for it to come on HBO
or Blockbuster,
or you had to wait to get it on tape if you had a VCR yet,
and then later DVD.
So yeah, a lot of people did want to see it in first run in the theater.
I mean, a lot of times, especially in the when I was in high school, I wanted to see movies in the movie theater first if I was interested in them. Right? It's like I just wanted to.
I saw a bunch with you in high school.
Yeah, but we didn't part of it. I think part of it always was like, I just don't want to wait to see this on DVD later on my crappy TV, right?
Right, 13-inch TV or whatever you have. The other thing, too, though, that happens here, when you introduce into any area something that is heads and shoulders more impressive and newer and more modern than what was existing, is people start to view the existing Cinema 5, for example, or Movie City 5, as cheap, as inferior.
Well, we can tell you guys what happened in our neighborhood is that Movie City 5 just closed down. They couldn't withstand the competition. They couldn't withstand it, right? Now, Cinema 5, on the other hand, was in a mall. So they did have still a draw, but what ended up happening is they needed to expand it because it became untenable because people were still going to it, right?
Yeah, because they're in the mall.
But they were really suffering because, you could just go to the Megaplex and they always had room for you over there.
Yep.
Right? So they expanded to 10 theaters or something.
At least, maybe 14 or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And they bought out space in the old McCrory's over there.
That piece of shit store that we've talked about.
I mean, it should have been closed down. It was awful. So
you need some birdseed and a koosh ball?
Yeah. It's just one of
the store for
weirdest fucking stores ever.
You need some stickers?
The point is they were able to compete, right?
Yes.
They were able to be like, okay, and actually at the end of the day, it was better for everyone in the local area because you knew no matter which one you went to, you would be able to see the movie you wanted to see.
Correct.
Without and they also expanded the concession stand so it would be able to have just the same option.
Yep.
Multiple people serving.
It was a huge deal.
Yeah. So once there was two, it was like I feel like the area was served.
Yep.
Right.
And plus, there was a Regal not too far away as well.
Right.
It was like a backup, in case case you needed to go to the Regal.
Right. But this kind of alleviated the whole situation in our area.
It did. And the reason I think it's worth mentioning all that, folks, is because I'm sure this happened to you. Right. I'm sure it did. I'm sure those of you old enough to remember, you remember your old shitty movie theater. And I want to talk about the old shitty movie theaters that we grew up with, Quinn, because
they were dumps.
One of the things that I remember, and I think this is a trope, but it really happened, the sticky floor.
The floor was unbelievable. Here's the thing that would always blow my mind as a kid. You would see attendants. A lot of times they wouldn't even let you back in before they cleaned it, right?
Right.
So you're like, wow, they must really be going to town in there, right? It's like they must have got the mops out, like all this shit, right? And then you go in and it's like,
Yeah,
like, and you're like, what were they even doing in here? Like, I don't even like know what the hell. Like, it was just like, and I did wonder if it was just so like bad from like years of suburban like gunk, like that they like there was just no. It was like a mission that was impossible for the movie theater kids.
It was seriously like the floor would erode from a solid into a plasma, you know, over the years.
It was disgusting.
What am I? Is this quicksand?
If you
like, what is
dropped
this?
something on it, you didn't pick it up because you're like, I don't even want to put my hand down there.
I didn't need that dollar, whatever.
Yeah. You're just like, no, it's gone.
And then there was also the carpeted parts that just smelled like damp urine.
I didn't think it was urine as much as
cigarette from when you could.
It was cigarette mixed with popcorn, like butter. It was like this weird, like it smelled like fake almost.
Well, that's because I know Movie City 5. They used to have this butter air freshener that they would spray
on top of all of it, yeah.
near to the concession stands.
Yeah.
My mom used to complain about it when we went to Movie City 5
Yeah.
to see the Nutty Professor, whatever the fuck we used, you know, like that era, mid-90s.
You know what's another thing is like the bathrooms were abhorrent. They were like the worst shit.
You're better off going to Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, like
to take a shit.
It was just like, how is this so bad? Like, you'd be like, I'm not in like New York City here. I'm in East Brunswick. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, who
like,
designed this? The Shell Station? Like,
yeah,
what is this?
How is this so terrible?
And,
but again, this was something that the Megaplex fixed. And then did you notice that when they expanded the one in the mall
to Mega Movies,
that they all of a sudden it was just like the bathrooms were clean.
This is an example of like the consumer demand actually driving change.
Right, it really worked. Like, because the only way to survive was to make it more like the Megaplex.
Yep, and it does suck for the theaters that went under. You know, don't get me wrong.
But we never even had any of those fancy ones anyway in the first place. We just had pieces of shit.
Yeah, we had Movie City 5, which was like that was like the garbage one. Like the mall one was more prestigious.
I
for
have
me.
a good memory of about Movie City 5.
God.
Is it's the only time I ever saw a double feature, which is something that's like gone.
Yeah, I mean, double features, even when we were growing up, were very well. What was a double? Why did you see a double feature?
So a lot of times, and this is a thing from really old. I don't know if they do this anymore, but I think it was either my after-school program, remember my summer camp or something.
It's always camp.
I don't think it was camp in this case because I'm pretty sure it was like in the fall. I think it was my after-school program, but essentially the school arranged so that the kids could go to the movie theater and that the parents wouldn't have to pay much,
That's
essentially,
nice.
right?
Yeah.
And so they took us to a double feature, and you could tell that Movie City 5 had some kind of deal going on with the school or something because they were all ready for us, and like we went in there, and there was like, I think it was like Beauty and the Beast and like some other Disney movie or something, like, or maybe it was another. I don't remember specifically, but it was like one of the new. Remember when Disney did Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast and all that?
Little Mermaid, all those Lion King.
It was during that Prime era where like
the resurgence.
and they were trying to get the kids all into this stuff. So they had set it up, and we saw a double feature. And I don't remember what the second film was, but I swear the first one was like either Beauty and the Beast or Little Mermaid or some shit. But it was actually, I still remember it to this day because it's this concept of, okay, the movie stops, there's an intermission, and there's like, go to the bathroom or whatever, and then a new one starts right back up like 15 minutes later. It's like really cool. I wish they did that now.
Yeah, double features used to be, speaking of the movie system, I guess we can roll it back a little bit and just talk about that in general for a sec.
Yeah.
An experience at the movies used to be, I'm talking about old Hollywood, that era, into the 60s and 70s, used to be a double feature would be very common.
Yeah.
A Sunday matinee. I mean, I know they still do discounted tickets on Sundays, but that used to be like a real thing that people looked forward to. Because it was cheaper
because
to
you
go on
get
a
a
Sunday.
cheaper movie theater ticket on Sunday, yes.
But also, you used to get little bits of entertainment before the movie. In fact, this is a good time to talk about trailers. So the reason they're called trailers is they used to come at the end of the feature.
Oh, really?
Yes, they would be on the trail.
It's pretty ironic that they kept the name.
Yeah.
Yes, you know this young man. You've heard more about him than any star personality in the modern entertainment world. Yet, here is an Elvis Presley you've never seen before.
But before the feature, you would usually get
cartoons.
You would get a short comedy such as The Three Stooges.
You get the news.
A newsreel, yes, because you didn't...
That is so... to me, the fact that the newsreel is such an antiquated concept, because it's like, this is a time, right, where there was no television news. So literally, people were going to the movie theater to get their news.
They got the news,
like, yeah. This is crazy.
And then some people also call it propaganda.
Yeah.
You know, it's during the Cold War, especially.
Oh, I mean, yeah,
and
this
World War
is
II.
not the standards of even like... This is much lower than ABC, CBS, and the networks,
and the
right?
same Cronkite.
This is
scientists today have discovered that the United States of America is the best country ever.
Yeah, it's like Uncle Sam has prepared a reel here about how good he's doing over there in Korea. You know, like shit like that. Like
those evil Japanese people will not last much longer,
right?
Due to the United States of America. You know, like that type of thing.
They're ridiculous, and they're lampooned now because they were just like so like I think it almost seems like the people back then knew it was propaganda, like right, the fact that they were making fun of it.
I know.
They're like this is just poor. This is just like a poor attempt at propaganda. Like yeah.
A highly trained and well-equipped North Korean army swarmed across the 38th parallel to attack unprepared South Korean defenders. Caught off guard, they were all but overwhelmed until the United Nations took its historic vote to intervene.
But that was part of the entertainment. You would get a newsreel, again, a short feature. I'm not saying always the Three Stooges, but, you know, they used to make shorts.
Right.
I don't mean like, you know, eat my shorts. I mean like
little meaning like
short movies
in time. They're short. Yeah.
It wasn't like you went to the movie theater just to see a 15-minute thing. That was part of a feature.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's when these would air. And
Looney Tunes and shit.
Looney Tunes, exactly. And then at the end of the feature presentation would be coming attractions, as they say.
By the way, what a fucking value. You get news, cartoons, Stooges, feature, then trailers.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff that was worth the price of admission.
And most of these back then, the tickets were like 50 cents.
They were like 50 cents.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, they were cheap.
They were.
Now, I understand that obviously like 50 cents back then was probably like $5 to $10.
Probably,
right?
yeah. It probably.
I mean, houses cost like $3,000 back then. So like,
you could buy a whole country for like 10 grand.
You got to put things into context here, but
you do.
Yeah.
But what happened with the trailers is that theater owners and managers started realizing people are leaving as soon as the feature was over.
Right.
They're not staying for the coming attractions. So they started moving them to the beginning, and thus that's how they attained their frequent place. Now that's all you get in the beginning of a movie theater.
But now there's almost a culture around the trailers.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like this developed a lot in the 90s.
Yes,
lot.
I would agree with you.
That the trailers, all of a sudden there started to be like an uptick in the quality of the trailers to the point of like people were like, and they were always a surprise, especially on newer movies.
Yeah.
And it was like, you'd get these reactions from the crowd.
Yes.
Like, oh my God, they're making a second one, or like something like
or, that's Denzel Washington or whatever, right?
It got to the point where I do remember that trailers were happening like for Star Wars. It's like people were like clapping after the trailer. Like, that's what I mean about trailer culture started. Like, literal, like, people looking forward to this shit, right?
That's trailer culture.
Right.
Might have a different connotation depending on your perspective.
Not that trailer culture. That, like, movie trailer culture.
Yeah, correct. No, but you're right, Quinn. And that is now an accepted part, I think, of the movie-going experience. And some people will time it around that. Let's say you don't want to watch the trailer.
Yeah, I've met people also that say that trailers are spoilers.
Yeah.
And they will explicitly, like, they'll wait outside for them to finish.
Right.
Because they don't even want to know.
They don't want to know. They want to be surprised, right? So that's part of the experience. And then, you know, the video that played that it was always like
Thank you for coming to Lowe's. Sit back and relax. Enjoy the show. But usually that was preceded by like, hey, please don't spill shit on the floor and like make a mess.
Shut your baby up.
And don't be an asshole like making a bunch of noise.
You can cooperate and help us keep this theater quiet, or we'll be forced without further notice to evict all disturbance makers and to refuse them future admission to this theater.
Later they had to add like, please don't use your cell phone. Like, can you put it on silent, you jerk?
Yeah, I think mine's been on silent
I can't believe
since
that
2009.
Yeah, I can't believe that they really had to like tell people to behave. Essentially, like there's like a message. You know what I mean? It's like they're telling grown men, like, could you just not be rude?
Like, don't yell.
Yeah,
in here we're here to. But yeah, I always liked, and I know they got better with this, but I'll never forget. It's the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
Still. and we're sitting in there watching these movies with the video, like, welcome to our theater, it'll be great.
Yeah.
And it's like, please turn off your pager. And it's
Yeah,
like, what decade am I
pager.
in? You know, like, please mute your CB radio. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing? They change these out like every 12 years, these
Also, if we
videos.
find you with a camera, you will be removed. Like,
I never saw anyone bootleg, but I kind of
Yeah.
wish I did.
Yeah.
I knew people that got bootlegs, I think, from
when
the
I
city.
saw Titanic, there was definitely a guy bootlegging that shit.
You saw a camera in there, huh?
Oh, yeah, I saw a handy cam. Yeah.
Did they have an intermission during Titanic? No, that was Wyatt Earp, you said, right?
Gettysburg.
Gettysburg.
That's the intermission movie I
Wyatt
saw.
Earp probably should have,
I went to see it with my father, and I remember there was an intermission, and we went outside, bathroom break, refilled the snacks up, and then we saw the second half of Gettysburg and then saw who won the battle.
Who won the battle, Quinn?
The Union.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. You want to talk about the snacks real quick?
The snacks.
Infamous for the prices.
Of course, inflated. But that's in line with a baseball game or a football game, or they know
they know how to ream you.
You can't get it from anywhere else. And I always got upset that the movie theaters at some point, because some people started realizing, what if I just bring my own shit? And then they got wise to that, and they like check you now. But
isn't that against your constitutional rights?
Well, it's their property, I guess. I don't know.
Damn, you're right.
Yeah.
Got me on that one. But the big famous thing is the popcorn, and they give you these buckets. I mean, it's an incredible amount of popcorn.
First of all, the one thing I'll say about popcorn is, even though they ream you out for the price, they do give you a lot. Like, I can't even order a large anymore. I have to get like a medium if I go. Like, it's too much for me.
They do give you some portion, as Uncle Leo would say. That's some portion, right?
They do, and I'm always was a big fan of the butter stuff.
That hideous concoction.
I love it.
What's in that?
So I have a strategy.
Cleaver?
I don't know what the hell it's called, but I have a strategy. So I put a little bit in the middle, right? Like a little circle. And then
hope you're taking notes, folks.
There's a strategy, folks. Is you got to aim it right? So you hit the side of the bag.
We're talking about popcorn,
the
right?
The inner side of the inner side of the bag with it, and then it leaks down the side inside of the bag and gets to the bottom. And then you have butter the whole way through. People need to do that. It works.
Now, are you a proponent of, like, what's your habit? Folks, we want to hear yours. It's very important. Do you start the popcorn immediately, or do you wait till the feature?
So every time I go to see a movie, I'm like, I'm going to be good this time. I won't eat it during the trailers. And then I get about like halfway through the trailers and I'm like, screw it. And I just start gobbling it down. And then I feel like I hate myself for it, because by the time I get like 15, 20 minutes into the movie, I'm like, shit, I'm at like halfway through the bag here.
That's why it's tough.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. The dine-in theater. This is a relatively new development.
It's okay for me, personally.
Is it our 21st century version of the drive-in?
Yes. It's like this, novelty. Look, please come, right?
We got to compete with Netflix.
Right, exactly.
We got to compete with streaming, right? That's what this is.
I've been to the dine-in. My only critique of it is, like, no matter how... I've been to multiples where they're like, we trust us, the food's good at this or whatever, right? And it's always like, I feel like I'm getting food off the train cart. Like the train, cafe car or whatever. It sucks.
Isn't that good?
Yeah. They're like, we have a full dinner, like a steak and all this, and you get it, and it's like somebody microwaved like some shit. Like, it's garbage.
Who gets the steak at Lowe's?
Well, just say it. I didn't get it, but my point.
Okay, good.
My point is that they advertise it, and then you see it come out to somebody, and you're like, oh, so this is just a ripoff. Like, they're trying to look like, okay, you have a full dinner here, right? Like, this is really truly like a dine-in, right?
Every hamburger's $28. Like,
right.
What's your problem?
But it's not even like it's specifically like a movie theater version of food.
It really is. It's not even restaurant quality or diner quality.
Right. This is my critique. Is like, if you were going to do it, then actually have like a chef on staff and like a normal restaurant, right?
They should just partner up with the casual dining chains that aren't doing it as well, like Chili's or whatever.
No, Chili's is doing good.
Excuse me, Fridays.
Fridays is not doing good.
Yeah.
Chili's is booming.
Chili's is like booming.
As of press time, Chili's is like in their most successful they've ever been.
Well, you know what? I'm happy for Chili's.
Yeah, me too. Like,
seriously,
because seriously, they are the best chain. Right.
We've talked in the archives. You can check that out where we talked about all the casual. I do like Chili's, seriously.
I have never had a problem at a Chili's ever.
It used to be my go-to. Out of the three in our area, which was Fridays, Applebee's,
it's
and
Chili's all
it was
the way.
always Chili's. Yeah. The Applebee's not bad, though.
The one next to me now, that I can
Yeah.
walk to.
Yeah.
I love that place. I love it.
They
I go
get
to it all the time.
Good margaritas,
Yeah,
too.
yeah, they're
They do.
fantastic. Anyway, but yeah, they should partner up. See, Chili's Dine-In Theater. That would be.
Oh, my goodness.
Could you imagine?
Put the focus on the restaurant.
the loaded potato and all that stuff while you're watching.
Megan Fox or somebody.
Yeah, like, it would be
Zendaya.
awesome.
Exactly. Quinn, you were a part of this, I think, or at least on the periphery. When you're a teenager, you don't have as much money.
Yes.
Let's say you got 4 friends and
Uh-huh.
go to the movies. Well, you pull your money and buy 3 tickets.
Yes.
There's a way to get an extra person in.
Oh, there always is.
There
right?
always was.
Yeah.
So we used to do this a lot. I'm sorry, the statute of limitations is expired on this, right? So I can talk about it? Okay.
I think every kid in America did this.
Yeah. You buy your 3 tickets or whatever the number is, right? And then person with a ticket stub takes 2 ticket stubs, goes outside.
Right.
To use the bathroom or whatever, right?
Like about 5 minutes in.
Yes.
You got to wait a little bit,
Yes.
right? That was always the strategy.
And then the friend who hasn't bought a ticket, doesn't have one, you meet them, you give them one of your stubs.
Yeah.
Then you walk back in, like, here's my stub, blah, blah, blah. And then they wait a couple minutes, and then they show the stub to the usher or whatever, and they let them in.
Right.
And that's how you sneak someone in. So kids, don't try that at home. Stay in school.
I'm saying how many kids back in the 20 years ago and longer probably now did that shit.
Yeah, I mean,
and then there was the other thing with the kids would do. Now, I never did this, but I knew friends who did this, is that the movie would be over and they wanted to see another movie.
Yep.
There was 2 movies they wanted to see.
Yep.
So what they would do is they would hide in the movie and they would make sure they picked the side of the megaplex that they made sure, like, okay, like if I just walk across the thing,
Yep.
so I don't have to go past the guy again.
Yep.
And then they would just go into that one.
Yeah. Can you believe it, people doing these things, Quinn? It's crazy.
Listen, one thing I have to say, I get it that it's not right or whatever, but I feel like movie theaters have to, like, they must know, like, they're kids. Like, it's like this shit has to happen, like, constantly throughout the country.
Do you
right?
think they build this into their overhead or something?
Yeah,
like that?
that's
Or
what I've always
it's
wondered.
in some
Like-
expense account
like
somewhere.
it's some like, okay, how many kids are gonna like sneak in or like
Right.
sneak their friend in or whatever? Like, because we can't like just police all of this shit, right? You should discipline them, call their parents or whatever you got to do, right?
Yeah.
As the movie theater owner, but like
really?
it's one of those things where you shrug and you go, kids. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I really feel like if you're being aggressive about this as a movie theater,
Yeah.
like, come on.
So, again, we don't condone this, but I would like to hear all of your stories, folks, about
And if anybody's like a movie theater manager or something, like,
Yeah,
how,
we're
how do
very
you,
sorry, too.
How do you handle this situation, right? Because
Seriously.
what are they, like 12?
What do you grab them by the collar?
Yeah.
Listen here, Sonny.
Yeah, like we don't steal free movie views or whatever. Like,
You need to forget everything you saw in that
Yeah,
theater,
yeah,
son.
yeah.
Or I'm going to call your mom, pa. Listen, there's a certain type of theater that we are not here to talk about.
oh, those theaters.
Get your mind out of the gutter and put it somewhere else.
Those were very prevalent in especially up to the 80s.
Even Paul Rubens knew that one.
Yeah.
Ooh. So you can use your imagination there, but please just use your imagination, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Don't use anything else.
Now, what about,
yeah, go
here's
ahead.
another aspect of the movie theater. What about also the sneaking about for kids on rated R movies? Now, this was a thing.
Now, I got into R movies a couple of times, but I was like almost 17.
So I don't know how much good it's enforced anymore, but I doubt it is, because what the hell could even shock anybody these days?
Right.
You can't see on the internet. There
Pee Wee
was
Herman mugshot.
there was people like there, rated R movies that were very popular that kids wanted to see. I mean,
like
there
Backdraft?
There was like the classic, pay the guy on the street
Oh, I did that a
buy,
couple of
buy
times,
the
yeah.
tickets for you.
Sure.
Here's, $20. Can you get me? Can you buy me a
We
ticket?
did that. I did that once or twice.
Yeah.
I forget what I wanted to even see. I really don't even remember. It was probably something really stupid like American Pie 2.
Yeah.
Or like something not worth
like
it.
raunchy or
Yeah,
whatever.
It was probably something dumb.
Yeah, but like I remember this was like a feature of the movie where there was like the hobo that would like buy kids, probably not even a hobo,
But not
just
a
like,
hobo, just some passerby.
Yeah, just some passer. Oh, yeah, whatever.
And they're like, I used to be a kid once. I know what it's like.
exactly.
And sometimes you find someone that didn't want to do it. We found that a lot too. And it's like, no, I can't do it. What do you mean you can't do it?
What are they going to arrest you for? A rated R movie?
Whoa. I'm asking you to buy me beer here, fella. Chill. We could go on about the decline, I guess, in viewership. A lot. The main crux outside of the quality of cinema,
Right.
that's a whole different discussion, has been pricing, I think, for the last 15, 20 years.
Well, it's
right?
priced kids out ultimately because that's the thing. Like, I hate to break it to them, but honestly, the main audience of the movies is younger people.
Sure.
It's not older people. Like,
or is that shifting the same way video games have over the last 20 years?
I think movies going back as far as they went back were a big draw for kids.
Well,
kids and teenagers
certainly were.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first movie that you ever saw ever in the theater?
Absolutely.
What was it?
Home Alone.
You saw that? That was your first one in the theater?
Saw it in the movie theater.
So that's late 90. That's so funny. Mine was also late 90, but it was The Rescuers Down Under.
I definitely saw that. I also saw another early one I remember seeing was Far and Away Milo's Adventure. What the fuck is that called again?
Which one? What do they do?
Philo Goes West or something?
FIFO Goes West.
Yeah, and Fern Gully. Like
all of those, Fievel Goes West. Oh, wait, maybe that's the one I saw. No.
Fievel Goes West.
Wait a minute.
I hated it even as a kid. I was like, this sucks.
No, I didn't see that. I was
little and I remember being so bored.
That Fern Gully, God, like I know that there's people that like that, but to me it's just like, yeah, let's go see Fern Gully. Like I don't want to.
Well, okay, but this is the thing, right? Is like during that like whole like Disney's making big animated features again. Period.
Yeah.
Like there were other like competitor features
I know.
like Fern Gully and shit. And like this was a time when like it's actually probably one of the most profitable like rated G movie eras there was, right? Where these were true children's movies.
Yeah, early 90s.
That they were of such high quality that adults would gladly go see. Right? It was like they were that good.
I remember seeing The King Lion in the theater.
Lion King. Yeah, Lion
I remember
King.
seeing that in the theaters.
I mean, there's the trifecta of Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King,
Aladdin
and
also.
Aladdin, sorry, like all four.
Quadrifecta.
Quadrifecta, right? Is like they were just like that lineup.
Yeah.
They just sold out movie theaters.
Yeah.
Those four in a row.
Those are like kid blockbusters, you know?
Right.
There's been a lot of movies I've seen in the theater, and I gotta say, I don't know that I haven't been in a while.
Yeah.
But I just have a busy life.
I've been in the last year or two.
I haven't. It's been a while
Some
for me.
friends of mine called me. I was like, you want to go see a movie? And I said, sure.
Do you still like it?
I don't mind it.
Is it less?
I just don't like, if there's nothing like, I don't care that much. I think I saw Oppenheimer with a friend.
Okay.
That was the last movie I saw, which was like a year or two ago.
Yeah,
I don't know. I do miss the summer blockbuster that was like really.
That wasn't a Marvel movie?
Yeah, that wasn't a Marvel movie, right? That was legitimately attractive from you wanted to see it.
You're talking like an Independence Day type.
An Independence Day or even like Rush Hour, right?
Right, sure.
Like an action movie or
Good
something.
action,
You
yes.
know? I miss that like 90s action movie shit or like just the movie everyone's got to see like Titanic, right?
Like Titanic, yeah, that's a good one. Or The Departed. No, I'm just kidding.
I think the Marvelization of movies where everything is a Marvel movie is really a problem at this point. It's like, bro, I just want to see like, it's not that I don't like a big feature, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
why is every big one a Marvel
I know,
movie?
it's been happening
right?
a lot.
Because like the rest of the lineup, they're like, oh, it's Indian, it's cool or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, I like that too, but like, hey man, can I also get like, I don't know, like a kick-ass action movie that isn't a Marvel movie,
Right.
please?
No,
Like,
I know what
thank
you're
you.
saying.
Like,
I know what you mean. I don't know how much that has contributed to the decline of the theater. Again, not that people still don't go, but it's certainly at the 90s anymore.
I don't think, I don't think that's part of the decline.
I don't
at all.
either.
I don't think the movies themselves are ever the part because regardless of if it's Marvel or not, people are going to go see a blockbuster no matter what, right? I think it's phones, it's,
The internet.
It's the internet.
Being able to get it ripped early.
It's the
screener
movie
copy.
theaters have been dealing with competition ever since television came out, and it's gotten only worse. It's like now it's the internet. Now it's this and that.
That's a good point.
Now it's you can have a big OLED television that's just as good with a sound system that's just as good as the movie theater. Right?
True.
It's
that's a good point.
You know,
too,
there's
Quinn.
a zillion things that compete with the movie theater at this point.
But you can't replicate the sticky floor unless maybe you have the right type of child.
No, they don't even have the sticky floor anymore, so they can't even do
don't
that.
even have that anymore. The artificial butter smell.
Oh, I almost would like them to get like scummier, just to like.
Yeah.
I think there was a charm to it. Like there was this kind of like almost rebelliousness about like going.
A little danger, you know?
Right?
Like
just a little. It wasn't any real danger. It was just like something.
It's like, is the light gonna fall on me? That type of danger, you know? Is that a cobweb? You know, that type of danger.
When was the last time this was clean?
Right. Is the screen gonna work? Does it have a hole in it? You know?
Yeah.
Is this the right tape? You know, that type of thing. Folks, we want to hear your movie theater memories and thoughts, and maybe you still go all the time. Maybe you see every new thing that comes out. Maybe you haven't been to the theater in 20 years. We welcome all opinions and thoughts here on this program, Quinn. We want to hear from you guys. I think, Quinn, you and I can both agree, though, that the movie theaters obviously are still an institution here. There's been small ones, there's been good ones, there's been bad ones, there's been the megaplexes. But most of all, Quinn, I think we can safely agree that movie theaters have a special place in our Acid Wash memories.
They do.
Folks, thanks so much for being with us here for episode 105. I guess we'll be back next week. You'll have to find out.
We'll see.
It'll be the next one in your app regardless. So just keep an eye.
Go see a movie in the meantime.
Yeah, go see a movie in the meantime. But we really do appreciate you being with us here. Follow us on Twitter at AWM Podcast. Join our Facebook group and let us know your memories of going to the movie theater. Do that, please, and stay tuned for the next episode of Acid Washed Memories.
See ya.
Like what you heard? Be sure to leave a review and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. We will see you next week.